The Syrian desert wind carried sand like ground glass across the rooftop. Through the scope, everything shimmered in heat waves that turned distance into liquid mathematics. 1,180 meters to target. The ISIS commander stood in the courtyard below, radio pressed to his ear, coordinating attacks that would kill hundreds if he lived another hour. Angel 6, abort mission. The voice crackled sharp in Elena Vance's earpiece. Sandstorm incoming. Visibility 0 in 90 seconds. I repeat, abort. She didn't move. Didn't respond. Her breathing had already slowed to the rhythm she'd trained 6 years to perfect. Heartbeat settling at 48 beats per minute. The world narrowed to crosshairs, target, wind. Nothing else existed. Nothing else mattered. Her spotter lay 3 feet to her left. Jackson Reed, 24 years old, Montana ranch kid who could read desert wind better than meteorologists with satellites. He didn't question her silence. Had seen her make shots that shouldn't exist in physics textbooks, much less reality. The wind shifted, 17 knots from the east. Temperature 114 Fahrenheit, humidity 11%. Her mind calculated bullet drop, wind drift, Coriolis effect at this latitude. Numbers became instinct, became absolute certainty. She exhaled halfway and held it. The world stopped breathing with her. The trigger broke clean, sharp, perfect. 2.9 seconds of flight time. The .50 caliber round crossed a quarter mile of superheated air, threading through wind that would have pushed lesser shots 4 feet off target. Through the scope, she watched the ISIS commander's radio tumble from his hand, watched him crumple like discarded paper, watched his bodyguards scatter like startled birds, searching for a threat they'd never see. Target eliminated, Jackson whispered, voice tight with awe he'd never quite lost. Jesus Christ, Elena, in this wind, that's impossible. Impossible is just math nobody bothered learning. She worked the bolt, smooth, practiced, already scanning for secondary threats. The sandstorm hit 30 seconds later. The world turned brown and howling. Zero visibility. Breathing became an act of faith. They extracted under conditions that grounded helicopters, Jackson guiding her by touch through streets she'd memorized from satellite photos 3 days prior. The team made exfil point with 4 minutes to spare. That was 2017, Raqqa, Syria. When Elena Vance was still Elena Vance. When Angel 6 was still just a call sign, not a legend that would force her into hiding. Not yet. The mission file would show objective completed, high-value target eliminated, 0 friendly casualties, classified success. What it wouldn't show, this was elimination number 189. That Elena Vance, at 24 years old, had become the most lethal sniper the Marine Corps ever produced. That 4 deployments across 6 years had turned a Montana girl who'd never fired a gun before boot camp into something the enemy whispered about in the dark. Angel 6, the ghost who killed from distances that made grown men check the sky for drones, for helicopters, for anything except the truth. That one woman with a rifle could reach out past half a mile and end you before the sound arrived. 2 years later, that legend would die, had to die, because legends drew attention, drew enemies, drew bounties that turned life into a countdown. But first, there was one more mission. One more promise to keep. One more night when Jackson Reed would bleed out in her arms, and Elena Vance would shatter more than just her legs. Syria, October 2017. 2 months after the Raqqa shot. Different city, same war. Same heat that cooked rational thought out of your skull. The reconnaissance mission was supposed to be simple. 6 Marines, rooftop observation post. 48 hours of watching, recording, reporting. No engagement unless compromised. By the book intelligence gathering. Hour 37, they were compromised. Elena saw it first. Thermal signatures moving wrong. Too organized, too deliberate. Converging on their building from 3 directions. Jackson, we've got company. 30-plus hostiles, 3 minutes out. He keyed the radio, called for extraction, got static, tried again, more static. Comms are jammed. His voice stayed level, but his eyes told the truth. They were alone, surrounded. 30 enemy fighters versus 6 Marines on a rooftop with limited ammunition and no support. The math didn't work. "Get everyone to the north stairwell," Elena said. "I'll buy time." "Elena, that's an order, Corporal. Move them, now." She'd made staff sergeant 2 weeks prior. Still wasn't used to giving orders instead of taking them. But Jackson moved, got the other 4 Marines positioned for fighting retreat. Elena set up on the southern parapet, 400 meters to the nearest enemy position. Urban environment, civilians still in the area, restricted rules of engagement. She could only shoot confirmed combatants with weapons. She counted 12 qualifying targets in the first sweep, started working through them. 1 shot, 1 kill, reposition, another shot, another kill. The mechanical rhythm of professional violence. The enemy adapted faster than expected, returned suppressive fire, lots of it. The rooftop became a storm of concrete chips and ricochets. Jackson appeared beside her. "Everyone's at the stairwell. Extraction, ETA, 20 minutes. We need to move." "Negative. They've got the stairwell bracketed. We move now, we die in the funnel." "We stay here, we die on this roof." He wasn't wrong. Her ammunition wouldn't last 20 minutes. Not against 30 fighters who'd figured out where she was. She made the call, the one that would change everything. "We jump." Jackson stared. "What?" "North side, 3-story drop. There's an alley. We jump, we run, we link up with the others, we extract." "Elena, that's a 40-foot fall onto concrete." "I know. We'll shatter every bone in our legs." "Maybe. Or maybe we die here definitely." She met his eyes. "Your call, brother, but I'm jumping in 30 seconds either way." He checked the drop, checked the enemy advancing, did the same math she had. "You're absolutely insane." He smiled, grim, ready. "Let's go." They ran. North edge, vaulted the parapet, 3 stories of empty air. Elena hit first, tried to roll, failed. Both legs buckled wrong. She heard bones snap, felt pain like lightning through her entire nervous system, collapsed, screaming. Jackson landed beside her, tumbled better, got up, reached for her. "Can you walk?" She tried. Her left leg bent at an angle legs shouldn't bend. She went down hard. Above them, enemy fighters appeared at the rooftop edge, weapons raising. "Leave me," Elena gasped. "Get to the others." "Fuck that." Jackson grabbed her, started dragging. The first burst of gunfire caught him across the back. Body armor stopped most of it. 1 round found the gap, punched through his lower spine. He went down, tried to get up, couldn't. His legs weren't responding. "No!" Elena crawled to him, both legs destroyed, Jackson bleeding. Enemy fighters rappelling down the building. 30 seconds until they were overrun. Jackson coughed blood, looked at her with eyes going dim. Don't let me be the last one you couldn't save. Promise me. Angel, promise." "I promise, Jackson, I swear." He died before she finished. 24 years old, Montana ranch kid who read wind like poetry. Gone. The enemy was 10 seconds out. Elena had a sidearm, 15 rounds, 30 targets. She made 7 count, dropped 7 before the slide locked back, then waited for the end. It came as helicopter gunfire. The extraction team arriving late, weapons hot, turned the alley into hell for anyone not friendly. They pulled her out, pulled Jackson's body out, pulled the other 4 Marines out alive. Mission rated as success. High casualty rate, but acceptable losses. Acceptable, as if Jackson was a number. As if his last words didn't haunt every breath she took afterward. Walter Reed Medical Center, Bethesda. 6 surgeries over 4 months. Compound fractures, both tibias, shattered left fibula, severed ligaments, nerve damage that made doctors shake their heads and talk about medical retirement. Colonel Frank Harlow visited on day 47. He'd trained her, believed in her, turned her from Montana girl into Angel 6. He sat beside her bed and told her truths she didn't want to hear. Chechen warlord Khalid Basaya put 6 million on your head. Confirmed kill of his brother in Aleppo last year. Iranian intelligence added 4 million more. You eliminated their top operative in Baghdad. There are 12 separate bounties from 8 countries. Total value, $10 million for Angel 6. Dead. Proof required. Elena stared at the ceiling. I'm done anyway. Legs are destroyed. Can't run. Can't deploy. I'm useless. You're alive. That's not useless. That's opportunity. For what? Harlow leaned forward. To disappear. We stage a training accident. Closed casket funeral. Full honors. Angel 6 dies a hero. Elena Vance gets buried with classified records sealed. And you get a new name, new identity, new life where nobody's trying to kill you. Doing what? I'm a sniper who can't walk. You're a combat medic who saved lives in 4 war zones. We retrain you. Nurse practitioner, forward deployment medical support. You keep serving, just differently. She thought about Jackson, about his last words, about promises made in blood-soaked alleys. If I do this, if I become someone else, I want to save lives, not take them. No more killing, just healing. Deal. They buried Elena Vance in 2019. Arlington National Cemetery. Marine Honor Guard. 21-gun salute. The works. The coffin held sandbags in a dress uniform. Elena watched from a distance, civilian clothes, leaning on a cane she'd need for the rest of her life. Or so everyone would believe. Kira Ashford was born that day. Same woman, different name. Permanent limp from injuries that had healed perfectly. 3 years of committed performance art, playing broken so convincingly that doctors believed the lie. 3 years of saving lives instead of ending them. 3 years of peace she'd fought harder for than any battle. 3 years until Montana changed everything. January 2024. The Absaroka Mountains rose like broken teeth against a sky the color of old bone. Temperature hovering at -18 Fahrenheit before wind chill. The kind of cold that turned exposed skin necrotic in minutes. Froze rifle oil solid, made breathing feel like swallowing razors. The CH-47 Chinook's rotors beat winter air into submission as it descended toward the landing zone. Inside, 18 Marines sat in jump seats, faces set with the particular tension of men heading somewhere they might not leave. Full combat loads, winter warfare gear, the quiet that settles over professionals before potential violence. And one woman who didn't belong. Kira Ashford sat in the corner, medical kit between her boots, left leg extended at the awkward angle she'd perfected through obsessive practice. 31 years old but looking older in the cargo bay's harsh light, angular features that winter made sharper, pale gray eyes that reflected light without warmth, hair pulled back tight enough to hurt, tight enough to remind her this was real, this was now, this was the life she'd chosen. The Marines pretended not to stare. Most failed. They sent us a cripple. Private David Hayes, 22 years old, hadn't learned to whisper properly. Sound carried differently in the helicopter's metal belly. Every word found ears whether you wanted them to or not. Kira didn't react. She'd learned not to. Learned to make herself small, forgettable, beneath notice. Learned to limp so convincingly that even orthopedic surgeons believed the injury was real when they examined x-rays she'd carefully doctored. 3 years of playing broken. 3 years of being invisible. The skills that made her Angel 6 hadn't disappeared. They just found different applications. The helicopter touched down hard. Snow erupted in blinding clouds. The ramp dropped, and cold rushed in like a physical assault. Move! Move! The loadmaster's voice cut through rotor wash. Marines flowed out in practice formation. Kira stood slowly, favoring her left leg, gripping the overhead rail for support that was entirely theatrical. She made it 3 steps before Sergeant Cole Brennan brushed past, impatient with her slowness. She stumbled deliberately, caught herself, limped down the ramp into the worst cold she'd felt since the lie began. The forward operating base was barely worthy of the name. Prefab structures half buried in snow, fighting positions dug into frozen earth that resisted shovels like concrete, camouflage netting strung between scraggly pines that looked dead even in summer. This was the kind of place that didn't exist on maps politicians saw, the kind of place men died without headlines. Captain Reed Blackwell stood near the command tent, watching his unit assemble. 42 years old, career infantry, face like weathered granite, eyes that missed nothing and forgot less. He'd led men through Fallujah, Helmand, a dozen places that taught you which people could be trusted when the lights went out. His eyes found Kira, stayed there, not with appreciation, with the calculation of a man adding weight to a scale already tipping wrong. She limped toward him through ankle-deep powder, medical kit heavy, making sure every step showed weakness, vulnerability, exactly what they expected to see. Captain Blackwell? Nurse Practitioner Ashford, reporting as assigned, sir. He didn't salute. This wasn't that kind of operation. Just studied her like a problem he hadn't solved yet and didn't particularly want to. You're the medical support they sent. Not a question. An accusation wearing questions clothing. Yes, sir. That leg, combat injury? Kira had the story memorized, had told it 60 times without variation. Training accident, sir. Compound fracture, extensive nerve damage. Retrained as medical personnel afterward. Can you run? No, sir. Can you carry a combat load over distance? No, sir. Then what exactly can you do for me out here, Ashford? Each word precise, clipped. The voice of a man who'd lost soldiers because of weak links in the chain. She met his eyes, kept her voice level, professional, empty of the pride that would have answered differently. Keep your Marines alive, sir. That's what I do. That's all I do. Blackwell's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. We're 8 hours from nearest surgical support, 12 from anything resembling a real hospital. If things go sideways, you're all that stands between my Marines and bleeding out in snow that'll preserve their bodies until spring thaw. Yes, sir, I understand. And if we take contact, you can't move fast enough to stay with the unit during displacement. No, sir, I cannot. He nodded slowly, turned to the sergeant standing nearby. Brennan, get her set up in the medical bunker. When contact initiates, and it will, she stays there. Understood? We cannot spare combat personnel protecting someone who can't keep pace. Sergeant Cole Brennan, 38, scar tissue where his left ear should have been. The kind of NCO who'd seen enough combat to know what mattered and what didn't, gestured for Kira to follow. His voice dropped when they were out of Blackwell's earshot. Don't take it personal, ma'am. Captain's just thinking tactically. Bodies that can't move are liabilities in mobile warfare. I understand completely, Sergeant. That leg, Afghanistan? Training stateside, actually. He grunted. Didn't believe her, but didn't care enough to press. Led her to a reinforced dugout near the command post. Sandbags stacked shoulder high. Timber supports. Barely room for 3 people, and the medical supplies already stacked inside. The bunkers smelled like dirt and old fear, and the particular cold that seeps into places the sun never reaches. This is you. During any engagement, you stay here. Captain's orders, direct and non-negotiable. Kira nodded, set down her kit, took in the space with eyes that calculated fields of fire, escape routes, structural integrity, habits that never died, just learned to hide better. Brennan started to leave, paused at the entrance. You really think you can keep people alive out here? This far from support? This cold? She looked at him. Let something true show in her eyes for just a fraction of a second. I've kept people alive in worse places, Sergeant, under worse conditions, with less equipment. I'll manage. He studied her. Something in his expressions shifted, not understanding, just the recognition that maybe she wasn't quite what she appeared, that still water sometimes ran very deep. Then he was gone. Kira stood alone in the bunker. Around her, the base came alive with coordinated activity. Marines establishing perimeter defenses. Sergeants barking coordinates and range estimates. Diesel generators coughing to reluctant life. All the sounds of men preparing for violence they hoped wouldn't come, but knew probably would. She unpacked her medical kit with practiced efficiency, organized supplies by what she'd need first in mass casualty situations. Morphine, pressure bandages, surgical clamps, hemostatic agents, quick clot, chest seals, the tools of her chosen trade now, saving instead of ending, building instead of destroying. But beneath the medical supplies, in a compartment she'd built herself, hidden by a false bottom that would fool any standard inspection, lay the pieces of who she used to be. Macmillan, TAC-50, disassembled, each component wrapped in treated cloth. The rifle had traveled with her through 4 deployments, 7 countries, 189 confirmed eliminations. It had been hidden for 3 years in medical equipment, X-rayed by security personnel who never looked deep enough, never asked the right questions. You didn't stop being what you were. You just got better at pretending you'd forgotten. She didn't touch the components. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if luck held. If circumstances stayed simple. If promises made to dead men didn't come due. Outside, snow began to fall. Thick, heavy, the kind that buried the world in white silence. The second Chinook arrived 90 minutes later. Kira heard it before she saw it. That distinctive beat of tandem rotors that announced something important incoming. She emerged from the bunker, limping through ankle-deep powder, and watched it land with the interest of someone who'd learned to read situations through the smallest details. One man stepped off, just one. That alone told you he mattered, told you this wasn't standard operating procedure. Colonel Frank Harlow was 68 years old and looked like he'd been carved from the same mountains that surrounded them. Tall, straight-backed despite the years, eyes that had watched the world burn in 3 different wars and still found reasons to protect it. He wore a parka that barely contained the ribbons underneath, though Kira knew what they were. Navy Cross, Silver Star, Purple Heart with 3 clusters, Bronze Star with Valor device. He'd earned all of them before most of these Marines were born. Captain Blackwell moved to greet him, clearly caught off guard by unannounced senior officer arrival. "Colonel Harlow, sir. We weren't informed you'd be joining this operation." "JSOC request, Captain. I'm here to observe your unit's readiness in adverse environmental conditions." His voice carried the rasp of a man who'd breathed too much smoke, swallowed too much sand, shouted too many orders that saved lives and ended them. "This is still classified as a training operation, correct?" "Yes, sir. Readiness evaluation in extreme environment, defensive position sustainment, and cold weather combat protocols." "Outstanding. Carry on as if I'm not here." Harlow's eyes scanned the perimeter with the automatic precision of someone who'd set up too many positions in too many hostile territories. Checking fields of fire, evaluating overlapping coverage, noting dead ground. The instincts never died. Then his gaze found Kira, standing near the medical bunker, and for just a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Recognition, acknowledgement, the kind of silent communication between 2 people who shared history no one else could know, who'd stood together in places that didn't exist, done things that never happened, buried truths that would never surface. Then it was gone. Professional distance reimposed. Harlow turned back to Blackwell. "Your medical support, that's her?" "Nurse practitioner Ashford, yes sir, recently assigned." "The one with the mobility limitation?" "Yes sir, training accident, Significant nerve damage. She's limited to stationary medical support. Harlow nodded slowly, face giving nothing away. Unfortunate. Still, medical expertise matters considerably more than mobility in a defensive position. Can't run and shoot simultaneously anyway. Blackwell didn't look convinced. With respect, sir, if we take contact and need to displace under fire, she becomes a liability we'll need to protect or abandon. Neither option is acceptable. Then I suggest you hold your position, Captain. Harlow's tone left no room for argument. It was the voice of a man who'd commanded in situations where positions were held or everyone died. Where are you bunking me? Blackwell assigned him quarters in the command structure. The two officers walked toward the tent, discussing defensive preparations, communication protocols, rules of engagement for what was supposedly just training, but felt increasingly like something else. Kira watched them go, waited until they were completely out of sight, swallowed by snow and distance, then limped back into her bunker, closed the canvas flap, and allowed herself one moment of genuine emotion. Frank Harlow was here, her instructor from what felt like several lifetimes ago, the man who'd taught her to shoot before she was old enough to boat, who'd believed in her when she was just another recruit who couldn't hit targets past 200 meters, who'd held her hand in the hospital after Syria, when morphine wasn't enough to stop the screaming, when Jackson's last words played on endless loop. The man who'd helped her die and be reborn, who'd created Kira Ashford from Elena Vance's ashes. He was here to protect her, which meant JSOC knew something bad was coming, something that might force her hand, something that might require Angel 6 to wake up one more time. She opened her medical kit, found the false bottom, pressed the hidden release she'd built into the seam. Inside, the Macmillan TAC-50 lay in pieces, waiting, patient. A tool doesn't judge its user, it just is, ready for purpose. She touched the barrel, cold metal, familiar as her own heartbeat, more familiar maybe. Hearts changed rhythm under stress. Good rifles never did. Then she closed the compartment, sealed it, covered it with bandages and emergency supplies, and the fiction that she was just a nurse, just broken, just trying to help. Not yet. Maybe never. She'd made a promise to herself. Elena Vance had taken enough lives. Kira Ashford saved them. That was the balance. That was the penance. That was the only path to something resembling peace. But promises were fragile things in the cold and dark, and some debts came due whether you were ready or not. Outside, the wind picked up, snow fell harder, temperature dropped another degree. The Absaroka Mountains had no mercy for the unprepared, no patience for weakness, no forgiveness for mistakes. Night was coming, and with it something worse than weather. Something that would test whether 3 years of hiding had been enough, whether Kira Ashford could stay buried, whether Angel 6 could remain dead. The answer would be written in blood and snow and impossible shots through a blizzard that should have made killing at distance a fantasy. But first, there was the waiting, the preparation, the slow build of tension that every combat veteran recognized, the calm before angels fell from grace and rose from hiding. The Marines established their defensive perimeter as the sun died behind the mountains, taking what little warmth existed with it, fighting positions at 50-meter intervals forming interlocking fields of fire, claymore mines set at likely approach routes, trip flares positioned where terrain funneled movement, all the standard preparation that turned training into muscle memory into survival. Kira moved through the positions, checking on the men. Not because anyone asked her to, because it's what medical personnel did. Because being present built trust. Because when the shooting started, these men needed to know she was competent, even if they thought she was useless in a firefight. She needed them to remember her as the nurse who cared, not suspect her as anything else. Corporal Liam Sheffield was 24, Montana-born, the kind of hard-edged young man the mountains produced like stones. He sat in his fighting position, checking his M4 for the third time, breath clouding white, when Kira approached. "Mind if I check your individual trauma kit, Corporal?" He glanced up, shrugged. "Sure, ma'am, but I know my medical gear. Been through it twice already." She knelt beside him, awkward with a theatrical limp, and opened his IFAC. It was well organized. He'd been trained properly. But she repacked it anyway, adjusting items to be even more accessible with cold-numbed fingers, making sure the tourniquet would deploy one-handed. "You been deployed before?" she asked conversationally. "Iraq, 2 rotations, Ramadi and Fallujah. You?" "Training accidents don't earn you deployment ribbons." The lie came easy now, automatic, like breathing. He nodded, didn't push, but he watched her hands as she worked. Noticed the efficiency, the way her fingers never fumbled, never hesitated, never second-guessed. The kind of muscle memory that came from doing something 1,000 times under stress, not from classroom training. "That's good work, ma'am. You move like you've done trauma care in the field before, under fire." Trained extensively in simulation. She handed back his kit. "Try very hard not to need it." "That's always the plan," he smiled. Young, confident, immortal in the way only men who haven't been seriously hurt yet could be. Never works out that way though, does it? Sometimes it does. Sometimes you get lucky. She stood, wincing as her supposedly bad leg took weight, the leg that worked perfectly, the leg she'd spent 3 years pretending was crippled. "Make tonight one of the lucky times, Sheffield." "Yes, ma'am." She moved to the next position, then the next, checking kits, learning faces, memorizing names, building the human connections that made triage decisions easier when you had 3 critical patients and resources for 2. But part of her mind never stopped working tactically, noting elevation changes, calculating ranges to likely enemy positions, identifying dead ground where attackers could approach unseen, marking which fighting positions had good fields of fire and which were vulnerable to flanking. Old habits didn't die, they just pretended to sleep, waited for circumstances that would wake them. At the eastern perimeter, she found Private Owen Garrett, 22 years old, the youngest Marine in the unit. He was looking at his phone, at a photo that made him smile and hurt at the same time. "Family?" Kira asked. He showed her without hesitation. Newborn baby, 3 weeks old. Impossibly small. Kira Elizabeth Garrett, born January 2nd. "I haven't met her yet, haven't held her." Something cracked in Kira's chest. The coincidence of the name. The reminder that these weren't just Marines. They were fathers, sons, husbands. They were futures waiting to happen. "She's beautiful. You'll hold her soon." "You think?" He looked at her, really looked, searching for reassurance from someone who might know. "We're pretty far out here, pretty isolated. If something happens, you'll go home to her, Garrett. I promise you that." He wanted to believe. She could see it. "How can you promise something like that, ma'am?" "Because I'm Angel 6, and I've never broken a promise to someone I swore to protect. Because I'll kill everyone between you and home, if that's what it takes." "Because that's what medics do," she said instead. "We keep promises. We bring people home. That's the job." He nodded, reassured by words he desperately needed to believe. Put his phone away, checked his weapon, got ready for a night that might never let him hold his daughter. Kira limped away, carrying weight she couldn't share, knowing that if things went wrong, if circumstances forced her hand, she'd break every rule to keep that promise. Jackson's last words echoed, "Don't let me be the last one you couldn't save." She wouldn't. Whatever the cost, whatever it took, Garrett would hold his daughter. Full dark came at 1847 hours. The temperature dropped to -21, the kind of cold where breath froze in beards, where rifle actions got sluggish, where exposed skin turned black in minutes, where the world became actively hostile to human life. The Marines rotated watch, 2 hours on, 4 off, trying to stay warm, trying to stay alert, trying not to think about how far they were from support if something went wrong. Kira sat in her bunker, supposedly resting. Instead, she'd opened a small notebook, began logging observations with the precision that had made her legendary. 1,720 hours, wind shift, 15 degrees more easterly, barometric pressure dropping, major storm system incoming, larger than weather forecast predicted. 1805 hours, diesel exhaust detected, faint, northeast bearing, non-U.S. equipment signature, possibly vehicles, 800 to 900 meters out, using terrain to mask approach and engine noise. 1823 hours, artillery fire, distant, bearing consistent with known training areas across Canadian border. Russians, pattern suggests ranging fire, textbook bracketing technique for indirect fire. She wrote it all down, every detail, the patterns no one else was trained to see, the threat indicators that separated professional military operations from amateur militia, the signs that said this wasn't training anymore, if it ever had been. At 21:30 hours, shouting outside, then someone running. The particular sound of boots in snow moving fast, panic-driven. Kira grabbed her medical kit and limped out into freezing night. Her breath crystallized instantly. 2 Marines were carrying Sheffield. Even in the dark, she could see blood. Lots of it. Black against white snow. What happened? She was already moving, fast as her fake limp allowed. Patrol hit a tripwire, one of the carriers reported. IED or mine, Sheffield took the worst of it. They brought him into the medical bunker, laid him on the tarp she'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Kira activated chemical lights. The bunker filled with sickly green glow that turned blood black. Sheffield's left side was shredded. Dozens of metal fragments had punched through winter gear, through body armor, into flesh. Blood everywhere. His breathing rapid and shallow, shock setting in fast. "Get me trauma shears," Kira said. Her voice had changed. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Pure clinical authority that came from treating gunshot wounds in Syrian alleys, blast injuries in Iraqi cities, sucking chest wounds in Afghan mountains. The Marines scrambled to help. She cut away his gear, layer by layer, jacket, vest, shirt, exposing the damage. It was bad, real bad. Arterial bleed from the femoral, punctured lung probably, shrapnel still embedded in a dozen places. In a hospital, this would take a surgical team. Here, she had basic supplies in her hands, her very steady hands that remembered how to work miracles when miracles were required. She worked for 40 minutes, no wasted motion, no excess communication. When she needed an instrument, she held out her hand and it appeared. Her fingers moved with the precision of someone who'd done emergency surgery in conditions worse than this, who'd kept Marines alive in places where death was the expected outcome. Clamped the arterial bleed, packed the worst wounds with quick clot, inserted a chest tube when his breathing deteriorated, working by feel and experience because textbooks didn't prepare you for this. Administered blood expanders and broad-spectrum antibiotics from her limited supply. Outside the bunker, Captain Blackwell watched through the canvas opening. Beside him, Colonel Harlow stood with arms crossed. "She's good," Blackwell said quietly, surprised despite himself. "Better than good," Harlow replied, no surprise in his voice at all. "She's exceptional. Trust me on this. Still can't fight, though. Can't move under fire." Harlow glanced at him with something that might have been amusement if the situation weren't so serious. "Can't she?" But Blackwell had already turned away, moving to coordinate response to the IED. Someone had placed it, someone hostile, which meant this training operation had just become something else entirely. Inside the bunker, Kira tied off the last suture. Sheffield was stable, alive. He'd need evacuation within 48 hours, but he'd live to see Montana again. To tell stories in bars about the nurse who saved him with surgery that shouldn't be possible in a snow bunker by chemical light. She sat back. Her hands were covered in blood, her jacket soaked with it. But her hands didn't shake, didn't tremble. Steady as they'd been in Fallujah, in Helmand, in Raqqa. Because some skills never faded, you just learned to use them differently. Behind her, she heard someone whisper, "Jesus Christ, she just saved his life. Did you see that? That was surgical level work." Another voice quieter. "Still can't run though. Still dead weight if we get hit hard. Liability in mobile combat." Kira didn't respond, just cleaned her instruments, checked Sheffield's vitals, made notes in her log for whoever would take over his care after evacuation. But her mind was working. IED meant enemy presence. Professional placement meant training, resources, intent. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. This was someone testing defenses before the main assault. She'd seen it before. Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. The probe before the storm, the test before the killing blow. This wasn't training anymore. Maybe never had been. Midnight came and went. The temperature bottomed out at -22. The storm Kira had predicted in her notes arrived right on schedule, punctual as death. Snow began falling in thick curtains that reduced visibility to 30 feet, turned the world into white noise and darkness. Perfect conditions for an assault. Perfect conditions for professional soldiers who understood how to use weather as a weapon. She'd seen it before. Thermal signatures masked by precipitation, sound dampened by wind, defenders blind beyond arm's reach, attackers invisible until they were on top of you, until it was too late for anything except dying. At 01:47 hours, the surveillance drone died. Kira heard the alert from her bunker, listened to the radio chatter with ears that understood what words meant and what they didn't say. "Lost feed on Raven 2, the drone operator reported, trying to stay professional. "Complete signal loss. No degradation, just dark." "Technical failure?" Captain Blackwell asked, voice tight with the hope it was simple. "Negative, sir. Battery was at 73%. This is signal kill. Electronic warfare jamming, or they shot it down with something sophisticated." The command net went quiet. The kind of silence when everyone realized the same thing simultaneously. When training became real. When the math stopped working in your favor. A downed drone meant someone out there had capability, equipment, training. This wasn't local militia with rifles. This was organized force with resources and intent. Blackwell's voice came back harder now, stripped of any pretense this was exercise. "All positions, heightened alert. We've lost aerial coverage. Rely on thermals and mark one eyeball. If you see something, report it immediately. Rules of engagement are now weapons-free on confirmed hostile targets." Kira limped to the entrance of her bunker, looked out into the storm. The world had become chaos, white static. You could hide an army in conditions like this. Probably were hiding an army. Colonel Harlow appeared beside her like a ghost. Didn't announce himself, just materialized from snow and darkness, the way old soldiers learn to move. "Kira," his voice was low, meant only for her, using her real name, not the fiction. She didn't respond immediately, hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 3 years. Kira was the lie. Elena was dead. Neither existed in this moment. "They're coming," Harlow continued quietly. "JSOC intercepted communications 12 hours ago. Russian Spetsnaz. 72 operators. This base was bait. We suspected cross-border incursion for months. Needed to confirm. Needed them to commit to something actionable. These Marines don't know." It wasn't a question. She could read it in how they moved, how they talked. They thought this was still training right up until the drone died. "Captain Blackwell knows now. I briefed him 20 minutes ago while you were working on Sheffield. QRF is weathered in at Lewis McChord. Storm's too severe for flight operations. 6 hours minimum before they can launch. Maybe 8 depending on conditions." 18 Marines against 72 Spetsnaz operators. She did the math. The terrible, simple math. The numbers don't work, Frank. Not even close. No. Harlow looked at her with eyes that had seen this equation before, had been on the wrong side of it more than once. They don't. You came here to protect my cover, to make sure I didn't have to break it. I came here because I knew what was coming, knew you'd have to choose between the life you built and the men who need saving. He paused. Let that sit. You don't have to, Kira. You can stay in this bunker. Let them fight it out. Survive as medical support. No one would blame you. Your obligation ended 3 years ago. She almost laughed. Would have if the situation weren't so completely devoid of humor. 18 men will die, Frank. 18 fathers and sons and husbands who thought they were training for contingencies, who trusted their government wouldn't abandon them. They're Marines. They understood the risks when they signed up. Like Jackson understood the risks? Her voice went cold, hard. Like Martinez and Thompson and Williams and all the others who died in Syria while I was too broken to save them? Harlow's face tightened, old pain surfacing. Syria wasn't your fault, Elena. You did everything possible. Doesn't matter if it was my fault. It still happened. Jackson still died. 6 men still went home in boxes because Angel 6 couldn't protect them. She looked out at the storm, at the invisible enemy moving closer. I made a promise. To Jackson, to myself. Never again. No one else dies because I wasn't good enough. You were good enough. You're always good enough. That's not the question. Then what is? Whether you can live with being Angel 6 again. Whether you can accept what happens when the world knows you're alive. Every enemy you made. Every bounty that's waiting. The peaceful life ends tonight if you do this. She thought about Owen Garrett. About his daughter he'd never held. About the promise she'd made. How long until they hit us? Harlow checked his watch. Hour, maybe 90 minutes. They're using the storm, moving slow to avoid detection until they're in assault range. And Blackwell gave me direct orders. When contact happens, I hide in the bunker. Non-negotiable. Yes, he did. Harlow reached into his jacket, pulled out a small device. The JSOC emergency beacon. The one that would bring hell from above if activated. The one that would also confirm Angel 6 was alive and active. If you do this, if you activate this beacon, if you break cover, there's no going back. Elena Vance becomes real again. Every enemy you ever made will know within hours. The peaceful life ends. Permanently. She took the beacon, felt its weight, light as a grenade, heavy as the choice it represented. Get to safety, sir. I'm exactly where I need to be. He put a hand on her shoulder, squeezed once. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. The weapon I trained became a healer. That's rare. That matters more than you know. Then he was gone. Back into the storm. Back to wherever old warriors went when young ones prepared for choices that would define them. Kira stood alone at the bunker entrance. The beacon in one hand, her fake limp keeping her anchored to the lie she'd lived for 3 years. The life she'd built from careful deception and harder truths. Inside the bunker, Sheffield groaned in morphine-dulled sleep. Outside, 18 Marines manned fighting positions against an enemy that outnumbered them 4-1. Professional operators who knew how to use weather and darkness and overwhelming force. The math didn't work. Not without intervention. Not without something impossible. And somewhere in the dark and snow, 72 Russian Spetsnaz moved closer, closing the noose, preparing to eliminate the Americans before anyone knew they'd ever been there. She limped back inside, closed the canvas flap, activated a single chemical light, then slowly, deliberately, she unwrapped the bandage on her left leg. The leg was perfect, muscular, undamaged, fully functional, had never been broken. The limp was theater. 3 years of committed performance, the most important role she'd ever played. She flexed the leg, full range of motion, no pain, no limitation, Never had been. Kira Ashford was the lie she'd told so well she'd almost believed it herself. Elena Vance had always been real, had just been sleeping, waiting, patient. She opened her medical kit, found the false bottom, pressed the hidden release that required knowing exactly where and how to push. The Macmillan TAC-50 lay in pieces, waiting, patient as death itself. Her hands moved without conscious thought, muscle memory from 1,000 repetitions. Barrel, receiver, scope, stock, bolt assembly, magazine well. 28 seconds from components to weapon. She could do it blindfolded. Had done it in darker places than this. She loaded 15 rounds, .50 BMG, custom loads, hand-selected brass, powder charges calculated for extreme cold. Every round perfect, because anything less than perfect meant someone died who shouldn't. The rifle sat across her lap, familiar weight, familiar balance, like greeting an old friend you'd hoped never to see again, knowing that hope had always been fantasy. Outside, she heard Captain Blackwell's voice, giving final orders before the storm made communication impossible. Ashford, when shooting starts, you stay in that bunker. You hide. That's a direct order. We cannot risk assets protecting you during contact. She looked at the canvas flap, at the storm beyond, at the invisible enemy moving through the dark, at the 18 Marines who trusted her to keep them alive. Thought about Jackson bleeding out in her arms, about Syria, about 6 men who died because she couldn't protect them, about promises made in blood. Thought about Sheffield barely alive on the tarp, about Owen Garrett and his 3-week-old daughter he'd never held, about futures that would end unless someone impossible intervened. She activated the JSOC beacon, 3 clicks, emergency authentication code that would reach NORAD in 90 seconds. QRF would scramble immediately, 6 hours minimum through the storm. These Marines didn't have 6 hours. They had maybe 60 minutes before contact. Maybe 30 minutes of fighting before they were overrun. Maybe less if the Russians were better than good. But they had something the enemy didn't account for, couldn't account for, wouldn't believe was possible even after it happened. They had Angel 6. Kira stood. No limp now, just smooth, powerful movement. The body she'd hidden for 3 years. She pulled on white winter camouflage, loaded extra magazines, checked the scope one final time, then stopped. Looked at the medical supplies around her, at the bandages and morphine and all the tools she'd used to save lives instead of end them, at the person she'd tried so hard to become. "I'm sorry," she whispered, to no one, to everyone, to the ghost of who she'd been and the person she'd hoped to stay. Then she picked up the rifle and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit like a physical blow, wind screaming, snow horizontal, visibility maybe 40 feet in the chemical light scatter from base positions. The temperature had dropped to -24, cold enough to kill in minutes without proper gear, cold enough to make metal brittle, cold enough to change everything about how bullets flew. She moved through the Marine positions using terrain and darkness. None of them saw her. Too focused on external threats, too convinced the crippled nurse was safe in her bunker where she belonged. She found high ground, barely 4 feet of elevation, but in flat terrain, 4 feet was everything. Went prone in the snow. The cold soaked through her clothes instantly, started the countdown to hypothermia. She had maybe 20 minutes before it became critical, maybe 40 before it killed her. Long enough. Through the scope, the world became green, thermal imaging, heat signatures blooming against the frozen landscape. And there, at 740 meters, a cluster of shapes, organized, moving with purpose, professional spacing, tactical discipline. The enemy had arrived, right on schedule. 72 operators who thought they were hitting an unprepared training unit, who thought this would be quick and clean and deniable. They were about to learn different. At the center of the formation, one figure stood slightly apart, Radio antenna visible even through the snow. 4 bodyguards in close protection formation. Textbook command element positioning. The commander. Kill the head and the body dies. Basic principle of decapitation strikes. Elena calculated. Wind 19 knots, gusting to 26. Temperature minus 24. Snow reducing visibility. Bullet would drift right. Drop would be significant. Temperature would slow powder burn. All the factors that made this shot barely possible. She made the adjustments. 3.5 mils right for wind. 8.3 mils elevation for drop and distance. Temperature correction minus 0.4. Numbers becoming instinct, becoming certainty. The commander raised his hand, giving orders, coordinating the assault that would kill 18 Marines who trusted their government to protect them. Elena Vance exhaled halfway, let her heart rate drop to 46, became still in the way only a true predator could, not just motionless, absent, a ghost in the snow. The trigger broke clean. 2.4 seconds of flight time. The bullet crossed 740 meters of storm-racked mountain air, threading through wind that would have pushed lesser shots 4 feet off target, compensating for cold that changed everything about ballistics. Through the scope, she watched the commander drop, watched his bodyguards scatter, watched radio discipline collapse into chaos. Russian voices screamed through intercepted communications. Sniper! Commandir ubit! Gde ona? Sniper, commander killed. Where is she? Elena worked the bolt. Smooth. Fast. Already acquiring the second target. Western squad leader, 695 meters, moving between vehicles. She fired again. Target down. Worked the bolt. Third target. Radio operator, 720 meters. Cuts their communication. Fired. The operator fell. Somewhere below, in the Marine positions, men were shouting. Confused. They were hearing impacts but couldn't locate the shooter. Didn't know whether to advance or defend. Didn't understand that Salvation wore white camouflage and carried a rifle that shouldn't exist. Captain Blackwell's voice cut through the chaos. Where the hell is that coming from? Somebody give me a location. No one answered, because no one knew. The shots seemed to come from the storm itself, from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Angel 6 was a ghost again, and ghosts didn't follow the rules of the living. Elena acquired target 4. PKM machine gunner setting up his weapon. If that gun opened up, Marines would die. 610 meters. Clear shot despite the snow. She fired. The machine gun never fired. The gunner slumped over his weapon. Below her, she heard Colonel Harlow's voice. Quiet. Meant for Captain Blackwell's ears only. She's active. Who's active? What are you talking about? You'll understand soon, Captain. Just press the advantage. Your enemy is losing command structure. Exploit it. Elena didn't hear the rest. Was already moving. Repositioning. 40 meters east. Using a shallow depression. Never shoot twice from the same location. Basic sniper craft that kept you alive when everyone was looking for you. Target 5. Mortar team spotter, 665 meters, adjusting for new wind angle. Fired. Target down. The Russian assault was fracturing. Leadership dead or dying. Communication cut. Units losing cohesion. 72 operators becoming just men with guns and no direction. She moved again, north this time, found a natural depression that gave her angle on the southern approach. Target 6, second in command trying to rally troops, 780 meters, partially hidden by a disabled vehicle. She waited. 3 seconds. 5. Patience was 90% of sniping. The other 10% was math and the willingness to pull triggers when it mattered. He moved into a gap, exposed himself for 3 seconds trying to direct fire. She fired. He didn't move again. 8 minutes, 6 kills, 6 pieces of Russian command structure eliminated. Their assault was stalling. breaking apart. Professional soldiers without leadership became just scared men in the dark. The Marines pressed forward, not understanding why the enemy was suddenly disorganized, not caring, just capitalizing on chaos they couldn't explain. Elena checked her ammunition. 9 rounds left. 9 rounds. 66 targets remaining. Not enough to win the battle, but enough to save 18 Marines. Enough to keep a promise made to a dead man and a live one. She went back to work. Target 7. Replacement commander, 815 meters. The man who'd stepped up after the first leader fell, trying to impose order through force of will. She watched him through the scope, saw him pointing, directing fire teams, saw the moment he realized his predecessor's tactics were failing, saw him open his mouth to give new orders. Then he was gone. The bullet arrived before sound, before his men could react, before they could understand that every leader who stood up would fall. The intercepted Russian comms went wild, panic replacing discipline. She heard the word that made her stomach tighten with understanding of what came next. Angel! It's Angel 6! She's alive! The ghost is hunting us! They knew. Of course they knew. No one else shot like this. No one else could make these eliminations in these conditions. The legend they'd thought safely dead was killing them from the storm. Elena worked the bolt, brass ejected, spinning into the snow. She caught it reflexively. Leave no evidence. Old habits from operations that never officially happened. 8 rounds remaining. Through the thermal scope, the enemy formation was dissolving. Some units trying to advance without leadership, others retreating to regroup. The coordinated assault had become chaos. But chaos with 60 men still held killing power. She needed to break them completely, make them run, make them understand that staying meant dying. Target 8, BTR-80 Armored Personnel Carrier Commander, standing in the vehicle's hatch, 640 meters. Moving target as the vehicle repositioned. Lead the shot. Account for vehicle speed. Wind still gusting unpredictably. Temperature still dropping. She fired. The commander jerked back into the vehicle. Slumped. The BTR slewed sideways as the driver panicked, lost control, ground to a halt, blocking the advance route for vehicles behind it. Perfect. Immobilize their mobility. Force them to fight on foot in conditions that favored defenders. 7 rounds left, but there was a new problem. A bullet cracked past her head, 5 inches right. Supersonic snap that meant someone had found her. Someone good. Counter sniper. Spetsnaz fielded them. Had to. You didn't walk into American operations without someone to hunt American long-range assets. Elena rolled left on pure instinct. Snow erupted where she'd been prone. A second shot. Closer. However this was, they were tracking her movement, reading her displacement pattern. She calculated his position from bullet trajectory. Northeast ridge, 880 meters. Elevated position. Thermal scope good enough to pick up her heat signature through the snow, despite her white camouflage. This was different now. This was predator versus predator. Professional versus professional. Angel 6 versus someone who might actually be good enough to kill her. She couldn't stay in this position. He had her ranged. Third shot would connect. But moving meant exposing herself, meant giving him another window to fire. So she did what he wouldn't expect, what no rational person would do. She went to ground completely, rolled into the depression, pressed herself absolutely flat, pulled snow over her body and rifle, became terrain, became nothing. Through the scope, barely visible above the snow line, she scanned the ridge. There, heat bloom, 880 meters, prone position, good discipline, not moving, but he'd lost her. She could see him scanning, searching for the heat signature that had vanished, trying to reacquire. The problem was her rifle, still warm from firing, still radiating heat. He'd pick it up eventually. Professional counter-snipers always did. She had maybe 30 seconds before he located her again. Not enough time to relocate to a new position. Not enough time to get an angle without exposing herself. So she did the only thing that made tactical sense, the thing that would either save her or kill her. She army crawled toward him, straight toward the threat, closing distance, getting behind his scanning arc, using terrain to mask movement. 70 meters through the snow, dragging the rifle, staying below the terrain line, the cold soaking through everything now, her core temperature dropping, hypothermia creeping in like an assassin, fingers losing sensation, toes going numb. She remembered training, Arctic warfare course, Harlow's voice cutting through the cold. Pain is information, temperature is data, the mission is absolute, everything else is negotiable. Young Elena Vance had thought he was insane. Now she understood. Pain was just your body complaining. Cold was just a condition. The mission was the only thing that mattered. She crawled 90 meters, angled east, circled behind his position through a route that kept her below his sight line, found what she needed, a frozen stream bed, natural depression carved by water that had turned to ice months ago. She slid into it. The cold was instant, shocking, the kind that stops breath and stutters hearts. Minus 24 air was one thing. Minus 24 ice was something else entirely. She submerged. Let the ice water cover her. Her thermal signature would vanish completely. The enemy sniper's scope would see nothing but frozen stream. Just terrain. Just nature. Counted to 30 while her body screamed. Muscles cramping. Every instinct demanding she surface and breathe and live. Counted to 60 while vision narrowed. Core temperature dropping into dangerous territory. Hypothermia transitioned from risk to certainty. Counted to 90. Then crawled downstream underwater. 200 meters. No breathing. Just movement and will. Just the promise to Owen Garrett and the memory of Jackson Reed, and the understanding that some things mattered more than survival. Surfaced 100 meters behind the enemy sniper's position. Gasped for air. Her whole body convulsing with shivers. Hypothermia setting in hard now. She had maybe 20 minutes before it became critical. Maybe 40 before it killed her, regardless of intervention. But she had position, and position was everything. The enemy sniper was still scanning her old location, still searching with professional patience, good at his job, well-trained, disciplined, not good enough. Range now 920 meters, extreme for these conditions. Uphill angle 6 degrees. Wind gusting unpredictably between 20 and 30 knots. Her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the rifle steady. Vision blurring at the edges. Core temperature critically low. This was the shot they'd talk about, if anyone ever knew she'd taken it. The shot that would prove Angel 6 was more than human. Or maybe less. Maybe something in between. She wedged the rifle against a rock outcropping, used it to stabilize. Couldn't trust her hands. Her body was shutting down. Hypothermia fighting for control. Breathed on the scope to clear condensation. Waited for her body to stop shaking long enough to aim. 10 seconds. 20. Her vision graying at the edges. Fingers white and nearly nerveless. The enemy sniper shifted, adjusting his scope. Still hunting, still professional. The wind dropped. 3-second window, maybe 4. She fired on instinct more than calculation. The rifle bucked. She barely felt it through the cold and adrenaline and the edge of consciousness. Through the scope, 3.6 seconds later, the enemy sniper slumped over his rifle. Didn't move again. 6 rounds remaining. Elena tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. Hypothermia had progressed too far. Core temperature too low. Motor control compromised. This was how people died in mountains. Not from bullets. From cold that crept in while you were focused on other things. She reached into her medical kit, found the emergency epinephrine auto-injector, slammed it into her thigh through winter gear. The medication hit her system like electricity. Heart rate spiked. Vision cleared marginally. Muscle control returned just enough to move. Just enough to matter. She forced herself up, started back toward her original position. Every step agony, every movement using willpower reserve she didn't know she had. The helicopter rotors were closer now, maybe 8 kilometers. She could see searchlight beams cutting through the storm. The QRF coming in hot, coming to save people who might already be dead if she didn't finish this. 5 more shots, 5 more eliminations to break the enemy completely. Target 9. Reserve squad leader trying to organize a fighting withdrawal, 685 meters. Her hands were shaking badly. Hypothermia fighting the epinephrine. She braced the rifle against her body, controlled her breathing, waited for the tremor to subside enough. Fired. Target down. 5 rounds left. Target 10. Officer attempting to coordinate vehicle extraction. 755 meters. Moving between BTRs. Waited for him to stop. 3 seconds of patience. He paused to check a radio. Fired. He fell between the vehicles. Men scattered. 4 rounds left. Target 11. Anti-tank team leader setting up a cornet launcher. 710 meters. That weapon could devastate the Marine positions. Fired. The team leader fell across the launcher. The loader abandoned the weapon. 3 rounds left. Target 12. Final visible officer trying to establish a rear guard. 730 meters. Fired. He went down. The rear guard dissolved. 2 rounds remaining, but there was no one left to shoot. The enemy was running, full rout. Vehicles grinding away through snow, men on foot scattering into darkness. The professional assault force had become survivors fleeing from a ghost. She'd fired 12 shots, 12 Russian command elements eliminated, 12 impossible kills in conditions no one should attempt. Angel 6 had returned, and the world would know by morning. Elena safed the weapon, 3 rounds still chambered. Insurance. Started to disassemble the rifle, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate. Hypothermia critical now. She dropped the bolt twice before managing separation. She forced herself to move. Back toward the Marine positions, angling to approach from the bunker direction. Had to make it look like she'd been there the whole time. Had to maintain some version of the lie. 50 meters, her vision graying, legs trembling, the epinephrine wearing off. 40 meters, she could see the bunker now, so close, almost safe. 30 meters, her legs gave out. She went down hard in the snow. Couldn't get up. Hypothermia had won. 20 meters, crawling now, dragging herself through powder. The rifle components scattered in her pockets. Had to hide them. Had to maintain something. 10 meters. She could hear voices. Marines calling out, searching for casualties. 5 meters. Almost there. She collapsed against the bunker entrance. Used the last of her strength to arrange herself. Made sure her legs were positioned to show the limp. Made sure nothing looked wrong except the hypothermia that was very, very real. Pulled snow over herself. Made it look like she'd been caught in a drift trying to help someone. Then let the cold take her. Let the shaking consume her. Let darkness creep in at the edges. Sergeant Brennan found her 30 seconds later. Jesus Christ, Ashford, what are you doing out here? She couldn't answer. Teeth chattering too violently. Body convulsing with shivers that weren't performance. This was real hypothermia, real danger, real chance she'd die from cold after surviving everything else. He grabbed her, started dragging her into the bunker, shouting for help. Captain Blackwell appeared, then Colonel Harlow. Get her inside immediately. Warming blankets, hot fluids. Harlow's voice, controlled, professional, but his eyes met hers for just a second. Understanding passed between them. She's got maybe 20 minutes before this becomes irreversible. They carried her into the bunker, wrapped her in thermal blankets, forced warm water between her lips that chattered against the rim. Through the shivers, she managed words. The shooting, so much shooting. I was so scared. You stayed in the bunker like ordered? Blackwell asked, searching her face. She nodded, couldn't speak more. But her story was simple. She'd been terrified, stayed hidden, that's all. Except Brennan was looking at her jacket, at the ice crystals that had a particular pattern, at the way snow had frozen to fabric. "Captain," he said quietly, "her jacket, that's creek ice formation. I grew up in Montana. I know what creek ice looks like on clothing." Blackwell stared. "What?" "She's been in water, recent, within the last hour." They looked at her, really looked, at her soaked clothing under the jacket, at the ice in her hair, at boots wet through despite being waterproof. Harlow stepped in smoothly. She was probably trying to help someone, saw a Marine down, tried to reach them, got disoriented in the storm, fell in the frozen creek. Lucky she made it back at all. It was a good lie, better than Elena could have managed through the hypothermia. Blackwell wanted to push. She could see it, but the radios were exploding now, the helicopters overhead, the QRF landing in force. "Stay with her," Blackwell ordered Brennan. "Make sure she doesn't die of exposure. We'll discuss this later." He left. Brennan stayed for another long moment, looking at her with eyes that saw too much. Eyes that understood something wasn't right about this picture. Then he left too. Only Harlow remained. He waited until they were alone, then leaned close, whispered below the range of any listening devices. "The rifle?" She managed to pat her jacket. The components were there, hidden in pockets, safe. "How many?" She held up both hands, showed 12 fingers through shaking that wasn't entirely from cold. "Christ, Elena, 12 kills. In these conditions." He closed his eyes. "You just made yourself real again. You know that, right? The Russians will know by morning. Everyone will know Angel 6 is alive." "Kira," she whispered through chattering teeth. "I'm Kira. Not anymore. Not after tonight." The bunker flap opened. A 3-star general stepped in. Thomas Carver, 60 years old. Hard face that had made decisions most people couldn't imagine. Eyes that had seen everything twice and been impressed by nothing. He looked at Elena, then at Harlow. "Angel 6?" he asked quietly. Harlow nodded once. Carver studied her for a long moment, at her shaking, at her hypothermia, at the woman who just eliminated 12 enemy combatants in conditions that would have stopped anyone else, that had nearly killed her in the process. "Get her warm, get her stable." He turned to Harlow. "And get her story straight, because half this unit suspects something impossible tonight. They're going to ask questions we can't answer, honestly." "What do we tell them?" Harlow asked. "The truth we can live with. Unknown sniper support, classified asset, above their security clearance." Carver looked back at Elena. "Angel 6 doesn't exist. She died in 2019. This is just a nurse who got hypothermia trying to help people. That's the official story. Anyone who says different gets reminded about classification and career consequences." He left, the command authority departing, leaving only the mess to clean up. The helicopters were landing now, 4 CH-53E Super Stallions, the whole mountain shaking with rotor wash, Marines shouting, orders being barked, wounded being triaged and loaded. Through the chaos, Elena heard one voice, young, scared, searching, Private Owen Garrett, calling for his squad leader, looking for familiar faces, making sure his brothers were alive. She closed her eyes. He was alive. They were all alive. 3 Marines dead from the initial contact, 9 wounded, but 15 were walking. 15 would go home. Owen Garrett would hold his 3-week-old daughter. She'd kept the promise, to Jackson, to herself, to the Marine she barely knew but had sworn to protect. The cost could come later, when the world discovered Angel 6 was alive, when every enemy she'd ever made started hunting, when the peaceful life ended for good. For now, 15 Marines would go home, and that was enough. That had to be enough. The medic checking her vitals looked concerned. Core temperature is 89 degrees. That's critical hypothermia. We need to get her on a bird immediately. Get her somewhere with real medical facilities. They loaded her onto a stretcher, carried her through the storm to the waiting helicopter. As they moved, she saw the Marine positions, saw evidence of the battle. Spent brass everywhere, scorch marks, blood frozen in the snow. Saw Captain Blackwell standing near the command post, staring at her as they carried her past. His face unreadable, but his eyes asking questions he couldn't voice. Saw Brennan watching her, his eyes knowing something he couldn't prove. Suspecting truths he'd never confirm. Saw young Garrett, alive, whole. He caught her eye as they passed. Didn't understand why, just felt like he needed to look, to acknowledge something he couldn't name. She was loaded into the helicopter. Harlow climbed in beside her. The engine screamed. The rotors bit air that resisted. They lifted off, the mountain dropping away beneath them, the storm still raging. The battle site becoming invisible in the white chaos. Inside the helicopter, 15 Marines sat in jump seats. Alive. Most of them anyway. Some wounded, some in shock, but alive. Breathing. Going home. Elena closed her eyes. Let the helicopter carry her away from the place where she'd broken cover, where she'd destroyed 3 years of careful lies, where Angel 6 had come back from the dead. Harlow leaned close, had to shout over the rotors. They know, Elena. The Russians' intercepted communications mentioned Angel. Every enemy you ever made will know you're alive by morning. The Chechens, the Iranians, everyone who wants you dead. She nodded. Knew it was true, knew what it meant, knew the price she just paid for keeping a promise. The peaceful life is over, he continued. You can't be Kira Ashford anymore. They'll hunt you, find you. You're a target now, forever. She opened her eyes, met his gaze. Then let them hunt. I'll keep saving people. That's who I am now. That's who I choose to be. You killed 12 men tonight. That's not saving. That's ending. To save 18. The math works, Frank. It has to work. Harlow sat back, studied her. The woman he'd trained, the weapon she'd become, the healer she'd tried to be. What do you want to happen now? He asked. She thought about it, about the rifle hidden in her pockets, about the medical kit waiting back at base, about the choice between Elena and Kira, between killing and healing, between the warrior and the nurse. I want to go back to being Kira Ashford, she said finally. I want to save lives, not take them. That's all I've ever wanted since Jackson died. That's not possible now. The world knows. Then make it possible. You did it once. Killed Elena Vance. Created Kira Ashford. Do it again. Better this time. How? She smiled. Barely, through the hypothermia and exhaustion and the weight of 12 more bodies on her conscience. I was in the bunker, like ordered. I didn't see anything. I got disoriented in the storm, fell in the creek, nearly died from exposure. That's the story. That's the truth that matters. And the shots, the eliminations, the impossible kills, unknown sniper support, classified, like the general said, above everyone's clearance. Harlow shook his head. The Marines saw too much, suspect too much. They'll talk. They'll figure it out eventually. Let them talk. Let them guess. As long as there's no proof, it's just stories, just legends, just another ghost story Marines tell to feel better about surviving when they shouldn't have. She closed her eyes again. I'm tired, Frank. Tired of being a weapon. I want to heal. Please, let me heal. He didn't answer, just sat with her as the helicopter flew through the storm, as the mountains passed beneath, as the battle site disappeared into memory and classification. 40 minutes later, they landed at Joint Base Lewis McChord. The wounded were rushed to medical facilities. The able-bodied were directed to debriefing rooms. The process of turning chaos into official narrative beginning immediately. Elena was separated, Two officers in civilian clothes escorted her to an isolated building. No explanation, no discussion. Just the understanding that some conversations happened away from official channels. Inside, a small room, table, two chairs, one-way mirror. She knew this setup. Interrogation, damage control, the machine deciding what to do with the weapon that had fired itself. She sat, still shaking from hypothermia despite thermal blankets in warm fluids, still soaked through, still exhausted beyond measure. Waited. General Carver entered 20 minutes later, alone, closed the door, sat across from her with the weight of command in every movement. 12 confirmed eliminations, he said without preamble. No pleasantries, no small talk, just facts. Range from 610 to 920 meters. Conditions that grounded most aircraft. Visibility near zero. Temperature -24. Wind gusting above 25 knots. She didn't respond. Wasn't sure what response was expected or safe. The enemy radio traffic identified you, called you Angel, said it was impossible, said you were supposed to be dead. He leaned forward. I've read your file, Vance, all of it, the classified parts, the parts that require presidential clearance to access. 189 confirmed eliminations before Syria, 4 deployments, 6 years of service, every decoration we can give. You were the best we ever produced. Was, she said quietly, past tense. That person died in 2019. Is she dead? Tonight proved otherwise. Those shots, in those conditions, no one else makes those shots. I was in the bunker. I didn't. Don't. His voice cut sharp. Don't insult my intelligence or yours. I know what happened. Harlow knows. Half the Marines on that mountain suspect. The only question now is what we do about it. She met his eyes. What do you want to do about it, sir? Reactivate you. Put you back in service. Angel 6 is too valuable to waste on nursing. We need operators of your caliber, especially now, especially with threats increasing globally. No, that's not a request, Staff Sergeant. Then it's a refusal, General, sir. Carver leaned back, studied her like a problem that wouldn't solve itself. You understand what you're turning down? The honor, the recognition, the chance to serve at the highest level, to be acknowledged as what you are. I understand I killed 189 people as Elena Vance, and I've saved 340 lives in 2 years as Kira Ashford. I know which person I'd rather be, which legacy I'd rather leave. The world needs warriors, Vance. People who can do what you do, who can make the impossible shots when everything depends on it. The world has warriors. It needs healers more. She paused, gathered strength. I gave you everything, General. 6 years, 4 deployments, my legs, my identity, my life. I died so I could have peace. Let me keep it, please. You broke cover tonight, activated the beacon, exposed yourself to every enemy who wants you dead. You think the Chechens won't find out? The Iranians? Every group that has a bounty on Angel 6? Then I'll deal with it, as Kira, living quietly, saving lives, not looking for fights, not being a weapon anymore. Carver stood, paced to the window, looked out at the base, at the life she was choosing over glory and recognition and the things she'd been trained to be. This is your last amnesty, he said finally. Next time you activate that beacon, next time circumstances force you to break cover, you're reactivated, permanently. No choice, no debate, no retirement. You understand? There won't be a next time, sir. You can't promise that. No one can. She stood despite the exhaustion, despite the hypothermia that still made her shake. Yes, General, I can, because I'm done being Angel 6. That person is buried. Let her stay buried. Carver turned back, looked at her for a long moment, at the woman who just turned down everything most soldiers dreamed of achieving, then nodded. Once. Sharp. Get her processed. medical clearance, clean clothes, documented story consistent with the official narrative. She was in the bunker, got disoriented, fell in creek, hypothermia. That's the record. Anyone who says different answers to me personally. He left, the weight of command departing, leaving only the human behind. Elena stood alone in the interrogation room, shaking, freezing, soaked through, but free. For now, for however long it lasted, for however long the lie could hold. The door opened. Harlow stepped in carrying dry clothes and medical discharge papers. "You pulled it off," he said quietly. "Carver's signing off on the cover story. As far as official record goes, Angel 6 was never there. Unknown sniper support. Classified. End of story." The Marines? Being debriefed separately, told the same story. Classified asset. Above their clearance. Most will accept it. Some will wonder. None will know for certain. He paused. "You're being transferred to Richmond, Virginia. Civilian hospital, emergency department. Effective immediately. Get you away from questions, away from people who might recognize something." She nodded, took the papers. Transfer orders, new assignment. The machinery of bureaucracy turning her back into Kira Ashford. "Elena," Harlow said as she started changing into dry clothes, "those shots tonight, the 920-meter counter-sniper elimination, the 12 kills in conditions that shouldn't allow any, that was the best shooting I've ever seen. Better than anything you did before Syria. Desperation makes you precise. No, you're better now than you were, calmer, more certain. The question is, why?" She thought about it while pulling on the dry shirt, about Jackson, about promises, about the difference between shooting to kill and shooting to protect. "Because I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I'm not competing. I'm not collecting numbers or building reputation. I'm just trying to save people. No ego, no competition, just mission, just purpose." She looked at him. "Maybe that's what makes the difference. Shooting to protect instead of shooting to impress. Killing because it's necessary instead of because you can." Harlow smiled, sad but genuine, proud. "I trained you to be a weapon, the best weapon we ever made, but I'm prouder that you became something more, something better. I'm still what you made me, Frank. I'll always be what you made me. I just choose to use it differently now." He handed her the final document. Medical evaluation, severe hypothermia, multiple mild frostbite injuries, cleared to return to duty in 72 hours pending full recovery, cleared to return to being Kira Ashford, to saving lives without ending them. "One more thing," Harlow said, "the rifle, the one you asked me to dispose of, the Macmillan. You got rid of it like I asked?" He hesitated. "No." She stared. "Frank, I couldn't. That rifle is part of your history, part of who you were. Disposing of it felt wrong, like burning service records, like pretending the last decade didn't happen." "Where is it?" He handed her a key. Storage unit number written on the tag. Richmond address. "If you ever need it, if circumstances force your hand again despite everything, it's there. Waiting. I won't need it. I told you, I'm done." "Probably, but insurance doesn't hurt." He stepped back. "Take care of yourself, Kira. And if you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me, day or night. Doesn't matter. I'll answer." She nodded, couldn't speak past the emotion in her throat. The helicopter lifted off 3 hours later, carrying the Marines home, carrying wounded to hospitals, carrying Kira Ashford back to the life she'd fought so hard to build. As the base fell away beneath them, Elena looked out the window, saw the mountains, saw the storm clearing, saw dawn breaking over a world that didn't know what had happened in the dark. Somewhere in those mountains, 12 Russian operators lay dead. Their families would mourn. Their commanders would rage. Their governments would deny everything while knowing the truth. And somewhere in an emergency room in Richmond, Virginia, A limping nurse would report for duty, would save lives, would keep promises. Angel 6 was buried again, deeper this time, with more weight on the grave, more classification, more official denial. But graves were fragile things, and the dead didn't always stay buried when people needed them. The question was, how long? How long until something forced her back? How long until Kira Ashford failed and Elena Vance had to rise? She didn't know, couldn't know, could only live each day choosing healing over killing, choosing life over death, choosing to be better than what she'd been trained to become. And hope it was enough. Hope the world would let her rest. Hope the promises she'd made were stronger than the legends that hunted her. 3 days later, the debriefings completed. 18 Marines in separate rooms, telling the same story in different ways. What they'd seen, what they'd heard, what they couldn't explain. In room 4, Sergeant Cole Brennan faced 2 intelligence officers who looked like they'd never seen combat. Soft hands, clean uniforms. The kind of people who analyzed war from climate-controlled offices and thought PowerPoint presentations were strategy. Walk us through the engagement again, Sergeant. Brennan had told it 4 times already. He told it a 5th. The ambush, the overwhelming force, the impossible shots that came from nowhere and saved them all. You never saw the shooter? No, sir. Storm was too severe. Visibility was maybe 30 feet on a good moment. Never heard muzzle reports? Storm was too loud. Wind and snow. But I heard impacts, heard the enemy dying, heard their commanders falling. The officers exchanged glances, wrote notes in folders Brennan would never see. And the nurse, Ashford, she was in the bunker the entire engagement? Brennan hesitated, just for a second, but they caught it like sharks catching blood. Sergeant? She was supposed to be. Captain's orders were explicit. Stay in the bunker. Hide. Don't become a liability. But he thought about the jacket, the creek water ice, the way she'd been positioned when he found her. Too deliberate, too staged, like someone who'd been somewhere they shouldn't and tried to make it look right. But I found her outside. Severe hypothermia. Said she got disoriented trying to help someone. Fell in the creek. You believe that story? Brennan met their eyes. Made a choice that would define how he answered questions for the rest of his career. I believe she's a nurse who saved Corporal Sheffield's life with surgery I've seen trained doctors fail at. I believe she nearly died from exposure. I believe she's the reason Sheffield is alive to go home to his family. What else matters beyond that? The officers didn't answer immediately, just made more notes, more assessments. You're aware there are rumors circulating about the identity of the shooter. There are always rumors after combat, sir. Marines see what they want to see, believe what helps them sleep. These rumors say it was Angel 6, the legendary sniper who supposedly died in 2019. Brennan laughed, actually laughed with genuine amusement. Angel 6 died 3 years ago, sir. Training accident. I saw the memorial service coverage on base news. Watched the 21-gun salute. She's buried in Arlington. Humor us. If Angel 6 were alive, if she were on that mountain, could Nurse Ashford be her? Ashford can barely walk, sir. I watched Angel 6 run a combat obstacle course in Iraq years ago when we crossed paths. Set the base record. They're not the same person, not even close. More notes. More glances between the officers that meant something Brennan would never understand. Thank you, Sergeant. You're dismissed. This conversation is classified top secret. Discuss it with no one. Violation will result in court-martial. Clear? Crystal clear, sir. Brennan stood, started to leave, paused at the door. Sir, whoever that shooter was, whatever classified asset saved us. They saved 18 Marines. Maybe show some gratitude instead of suspicion. Maybe let sleeping dogs lie if they want to sleep. He left before they could respond. Left them with their notes and their questions and their need to solve mysteries that were better left unsolved. In room 7, Captain Reed Blackwell told his version. Professional, detailed, missing nothing except the understanding that would make it make sense. Unknown sniper support, classified asset. That's what Colonel Harlow said when I pressed for details. And you accepted that explanation without question? Blackwell considered carefully. I accepted that someone saved my Marines, someone with capabilities beyond standard infantry, beyond anything I've seen in 15 years of combat operations. Whether that's Delta, SEAL Team, CIA Special Activities, or some special access program I don't have clearance for, isn't my concern or my business. But you have suspicions. I have questions. Ashford predicted the attack timing to the minute, predicted enemy positioning with uncanny accuracy, read tactical patterns like she'd written the enemy's operation order herself. You think she has intelligence background? More than nursing? I think she's not just a nurse. Blackwell leaned forward, spoke carefully. But here's what I know with certainty. 12 enemy command elements were eliminated in conditions that made shooting nearly impossible. My Marines survived an engagement they should have lost. If Ashford had anything to do with that, if she contributed in any way, then I owe her. We all owe her. And I protect people I owe. The officers made their notes, asked their questions, got nothing useful because Blackwell had decided what mattered. Loyalty mattered. Marines taking care of Marines mattered. The rest was just paperwork. In room 12, Private Owen Garrett sat across from a single officer. Younger than the others, less experienced at interrogation, still learning how to read people. You named your daughter after the nurse? Yes, sir. Kira Elizabeth Garrett, born 3 weeks before Montana. Why that name specifically? Garrett thought about it, about the promise she'd made, about the certainty in her voice when everyone else was terrified. Because Nurse Ashford told me I'd go home, told me I'd hold my daughter, and she was right. I'm here. I'm alive. That matters more than anything else. Did you see her during the engagement? No, sir. I was in my fighting position, focused on targets and staying alive. But you have thoughts, theories, about the mystery shooter who saved you. Garrett smiled, genuine warmth. Everyone has thoughts, sir. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean they matter. Share them anyway. That's an order. I think someone impossible saved us. Someone who shoots better than physics should allow. Someone who kept a promise when it mattered most. He paused, met the officer's eyes directly. And I think whoever they are, they deserve to be left alone. They deserve peace. They've earned it. The officer frowned. That's not how classification works, Private. That's not how we determine what's real and what's... With respect, sir, that's exactly how it should work. Someone risked everything to save us. 18 Marines went home because of them. The least we can do is keep their secrets, protect them the way they protected us. The debriefings continued for 8 hours. 18 Marines, 18 versions of the same impossible story. And slowly, painfully, a consensus formed. Unknown sniper support, classified asset, above our clearance. Don't ask questions. Don't seek answers. Accept the gift and move on. The official record was written that night, typed by officers who'd never been to Montana, signed by commanders who understood that some operations needed fog more than clarity. Engagement summary. U.S. Marine Training Unit engaged by hostile force, estimated 72 plus personnel. Enemy suffered catastrophic leadership casualties from unknown friendly sniper support. U.S. casualties, 3 KIA, 9 WIA. Enemy casualties, 12 KIA confirmed, 47 plus WIA estimated. Enemy force routed. Identity of supporting sniper element classified under Special Access Program protocols. No further investigation warranted or authorized. General Carver signed it, sealed it, filed it in systems that required presidential clearance to access. The truth was buried under classification, under need to know, under the weight of plausible deniability and strategic ambiguity. But the Marines remembered, and Marines talked. And slowly, carefully, a new legend started growing about the night Angel 6 came back from the dead to save 18 men in a Montana blizzard. They'd never prove it, never confirm it, never know for certain, but they believed. And belief was its own kind of truth. 3 days after the debriefings, Kira Ashford was medically cleared to return to duty. Evaluations showed recovery from severe hypothermia, minor frostbite on 3 fingers, mild malnutrition, recommended 72 hours rest, then returned to standard duties. She reported to the base hospital for final discharge processing. A nurse handed her paperwork. Transfer orders to Richmond, Virginia, Civilian Hospital Emergency Department, effective immediately. "You're being reassigned," the nurse explained with professional courtesy. "Command thinks you need a break from forward deployment after the trauma you experienced." Kira nodded, didn't argue. Understood, this was part of the arrangement. Get her away from the Marines, who suspected. Away from questions she couldn't answer honestly. Away from people who might recognize what she was beneath the limp and the lies. She signed the papers, took her discharge documents, limped toward the exit with the performance she'd perfected over 3 years. "Ashford," she turned. Captain Blackwell stood in the corridor, out of uniform, civilian clothes, looking older than he had in Montana, tired in ways that suggested he hadn't slept well since that night. "Captain, just read now. I'm off duty." He moved closer, lowered his voice. "I wanted to thank you personally, for Sheffield, for keeping him alive long enough for real medical care to matter. Just doing my job, sir." "No, you did more than that." He paused, chose words carefully. "A lot more than anyone could reasonably expect from a nurse stationed in a bunker." She met his eyes, saw the question he wouldn't ask, the accusation he wouldn't make, the gratitude fighting with confusion and suspicion. "I was in the bunker," she said quietly, firmly, like ordered. "I didn't see what happened outside, just heard the shooting and was terrified." "I know what you said. I read your statement multiple times." He stepped closer. "But I also know impossible when I see it. And those shots were impossible unless someone extraordinary made them. Someone with training and experience beyond anything normal." "Unless what, sir?" "Unless someone extraordinary was there. Someone who cared enough to risk everything." He held her gaze. "If that person exists, if they saved my Marines and nearly died doing it, I want them to know something." "What's that?" "That I misjudged them completely, called them useless, dead weight, liability. And I was wrong, completely, utterly wrong." His voice roughened with emotion he didn't hide. "And if I'm ever in the dark again with bad odds and no hope, that's the person I want watching my back. The person I'd trust with my life and my Marines' lives, without hesitation." Kira felt something crack inside her chest. Recognition. The kind she hadn't felt in 3 years. The kind that made being Kira harder and being Elena tempting. "I'll pass that along," she managed. "If I ever meet someone like that." Blackwell nodded, extended his hand. "Take care of yourself, Ashford. World needs good nurses. We don't have nearly enough of them." She shook his hand, felt the strength and the sincerity. "World needs good officers too, Captain. Leaders who care about their people. We don't have enough of those either." He left. She watched him go. Another piece of the Montana operation walking away into normal life, into the world that would never know what really happened on that frozen mountain. She turned back toward the exit, found Colonel Harlow waiting by the door like a statue, like he'd been there all along. "Walk with me," he said. They walked the base perimeter, early spring, the snow melting, the world coming back to life after winter's death. Renewal, rebirth, all the metaphors that felt too obvious. "The debriefings are complete," Harlow said as they walked. "Official story is locked and sealed. Marines bought it, Most of them anyway. The ones who didn't chose to keep quiet out of loyalty or respect or fear of looking insane. And the ones who suspect the truth chose to keep that suspicion to themselves. Loyalty matters in the Corps. Marines protect Marines, even from inconvenient truths. He glanced at her. You made an impression, Elena, a lasting one. Kira. Right, Kira. He didn't sound convinced, didn't sound like he believed she could ever be just Kira again. The transfer to Richmond is permanent. Civilian hospital, no military oversight, no official connection to the Corps. You can disappear into normal life. Be the nurse you want to be. Save lives without anyone watching. That's good. That's what I want. Is it? They walked in silence for a moment. You saved 18 Marines, eliminated 12 threats, made shots I've only seen in training films and target demonstrations. And now you're going to change bedpans in suture drunk drivers. Yes. Why? She stopped walking, looked at him, at the man who trained her, believed in her, helped her become something impossible, and then helped her hide from it. Because those 18 Marines have families waiting for them, have futures they wouldn't have had without intervention. Sheffield's going to finish his engineering degree. Blackwell's going to make major and command a company. Garrett's going to watch his daughter grow up and graduate high school and get married someday. That matters more than eliminations, more than confirmed kills, more than being the best at ending lives. Harlow studied her. You really believe that? It's not just words. You genuinely believe healing matters more than your capability for violence. I have to believe it. Otherwise, what was it all for? The pain, the hiding, the 3 years of living a lie and playing broken. If I don't believe healing matters more, then I'm just a weapon, just a tool, just a thing that kills efficiently. It was for this, for the moment when 18 men needed you, and you were there. And now that moment's over. Let me go back to saving lives quietly. He sighed, reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope, official seal. Your new identity documents, updated driver's license, medical credentials, everything you need to be Kira Ashford permanently, legally, completely. She took it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He pulled out a second envelope, heavier, official looking. This is from General Carver. Read it later. When you're alone, when you're ready to understand what it means. She took that too, felt the weight, knew it probably contained truths she wasn't ready for. Frank, will they come for me? The Chechens, the Iranians, all the people who want Angel 6 dead. Eventually, probably, the Russians will share what they learned. Intel gets traded. Word spreads. The people who've been hunting Angel 6 for 3 years will hear she's alive. He put a hand on her shoulder. But you'll be ready, because you're always ready, even when you're pretending not to be. I don't want to be ready for war. I want to live in peace. Then do both. Be the nurse who saves lives, but keep the warrior close enough to surface if needed. Keep yourself sharp. Keep your skills current, just in case. That's not peace, Frank. That's just waiting for the next war. Maybe, but it's the best option you have. They reached her transport vehicle, a van that would take her to the airport, to Richmond, to the new life waiting. One more thing, the rifle, the Macmillan, the one you asked me to dispose of. You said you kept it in storage. I did. Richmond, storage unit. The key I gave you is real. He paused. But I need you to understand something. I kept it because I believe you'll need it again. Not because I want you to. Not because I'm hoping for violence. But because I've been doing this for 40 years, and I recognize when someone's story isn't finished. My story with violence is finished. Has been since Syria. I hope you're right. I genuinely do. But hope isn't strategy. He stepped back. Take care of yourself, Kira. Be the person you want to be. Save the lives you want to save. And if you ever need anything, advice, support, extraction, anything, you call me. Doesn't matter when, doesn't matter why, I answer. She nodded, got in the van, watched him disappear as they drove away. The mentor becoming memory, the instructor becoming ghost. The flight to Richmond took 4 hours. She sat in coach, window seat, watched America pass beneath her. Cities and farmland and rivers that looked like veins carrying life through the country she'd protected by killing its enemies. The paradox she couldn't escape. Protection through violence. Life through death. Building through destroying. The envelope from Carver stayed sealed until she was in her new apartment. Small, 1-bedroom, quiet neighborhood. The kind of anonymous urban housing where no one knew their neighbors, and everyone preferred it that way. She opened it alone. Late at night, curtains drawn, doors locked. Inside, a single sheet of paper, classified header, General Carver's signature at the bottom. She read it 3 times. Staff Sergeant Vance, this letter serves as official acknowledgement of actions taken during engagement designated Operation Frozen Angel. Your conduct resulted in preservation of 18 U.S. Marine personnel and complete rout of hostile force. This action would normally result in commendations up to and including Medal of Honor. However, given classified nature of your status, no official recognition can be provided. Invest that your service is noted, appreciated, and will never be forgotten by those who know the truth. You have fulfilled your obligation to this nation beyond any reasonable expectation. Your request for permanent separation is approved. Effective immediately, Angel 6 is honorably retired. You are free to live as Kira Ashford without further obligation. This nation thanks you for your service. You have earned your peace. Use it well. General Thomas Carver, USSOCOM. She read it 3 times, then burned it in the kitchen sink, watched the paper curl and blacken, watched her official acknowledgement turn to ash that swirled down the drain. No medal, no ceremony, no recognition beyond words on paper that no longer existed. Just freedom, just peace, just the chance to be Kira Ashford without apology or explanation. She started work at Richmond Memorial Hospital 2 days later. Emergency department, night shift, the chaos of urban trauma, where every day brought new variations of human fragility. Car accidents, gunshot wounds, heart attacks, overdoses, domestic violence, industrial accidents, the endless parade of ways people broke and bled and died without dramatic music or heroic narratives. She was exceptional at it, better than good. Her hands absolutely steady, her judgment sound under pressure, her ability to triage and prioritize, honed by battlefield medicine, where choices meant life or death without appeals or second chances. The other nurses noticed, the doctors noticed, the patients noticed without understanding why, but they all attributed it to training, to natural talent, to the kind of competence that some people just possessed. No one suspected the limping nurse was anything more than she appeared. No one asked questions that would have gotten uncomfortable answers. Weeks became months. Spring became summer. The rhythm of emergency medicine became her new normal, her new reality, her new life built from the ashes of the old. She saved lives. Car accident victim with internal bleeding who would have died in transport. Overdose patient whose heart had stopped for 3 minutes. Shooting victim with severed femoral artery who had maybe 2 minutes before exsanguination. Each one a small victory against death. Each one proof that she was more than a weapon. More than Angel 6. More than 201 confirmed kills. At home she lived quietly. No social media, no dating, no connections that could be exploited by people hunting Angel 6. The lonely life of someone who couldn't risk attachment because attachment meant vulnerability, meant weapons that enemies could use. Sometimes late at night she thought about Montana, about the 12 men she'd killed, about the 18 she'd saved, about whether the balance sheet ever truly balanced, or if violence just accumulated until the weight crushed you. The math worked. It had to work. Otherwise, nothing made sense. 3 months after Richmond, an envelope arrived. No return address. Postmarked, Montana. Inside, a photograph. Owen Garrett holding his daughter. Both smiling, healthy, alive, real. And a note in neat handwriting. Kira Elizabeth Garrett, 6 months old. Healthy and loved beyond measure. You kept your promise to a Marine you barely knew. We'll keep yours to you. Your secret is safe. Thank you for giving me my future. Thank you for being the angel who saved her daddy. The Garrett family. She put the photo on her refrigerator, the only personal item in the apartment, the only proof that Montana had been real, that the nightmare and the miracle had both happened. The only reminder that sometimes angels had to break cover to keep promises. And sometimes promises mattered more than peace. 6 months after Richmond, late shift at the hospital, 0200 hours, Friday night. The ER unusually quiet, which always made veterans nervous because calm never lasted. Kira was restocking trauma supplies when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. Instinct. The kind that kept you alive when rational thought was too slow. Ashford. It's Brennan, Sergeant Cole Brennan from Montana. His voice was strained, pain underneath professional control. She recognized it immediately, remembered Montana, remembered the Marine who'd found her in the snow. Sergeant, what's wrong? I need help, medical help. Can't go to a hospital, can't explain why. But I remembered you. Remembered how you saved Sheffield with surgery that shouldn't be possible in those conditions. Every instinct screamed, trap, setup, someone who'd figured out who she was, someone looking for Angel 6 who couldn't be found any other way. But his pain sounded real, his desperation genuine, and Marines took care of Marines, always. Where are you? He gave an address. Industrial area, wrong side of town, the kind of place where questions weren't asked and answers weren't given. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep pressure on whatever's bleeding. Elevate if possible. Stay conscious. She grabbed supplies from the ER, told the charge nurse, family emergency, drove to the address with her heart rate elevated and her tactical awareness screaming that this could be the trap that ended everything. Found Brennan in a warehouse. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. 2 other men with him, also shot. Some kind of operation gone wrong. Some kind of classified mess that couldn't see official light. Jesus, Brennan, what happened? Can't tell you. Classified beyond your clearance. But we need help. Quiet help. The kind that doesn't involve police reports or hospital records. She went to work. No questions. Just medicine. The familiar rhythm of emergency trauma. Extracted bullets. Repaired damage. Saved 3 men who couldn't afford to be saved officially. Brennan watched her work. Saw the same competence from Montana. The same steady hands. The same clinical precision that transcended normal nursing. You're not just a nurse, are you? He said quietly when she was suturing his abdomen. She didn't answer, just kept working, focused on saving rather than explaining. Montana, those shots, that was you. I know it was. I was in the bunker like ordered. Bullshit, he grabbed her wrist, not hard, just firm, just enough to make her meet his eyes. I know what I saw, know what doesn't add up. The creek ice on your jacket, the way you position yourself, the timing of everything. You're her, you're Angel 6. She could deny it, could lie, could maintain the fiction that had kept her alive and free for 3 years. Or she could trust the man she just saved, the way he was trusting her with his life and his secrets. Angel 6 died in 2019, she said carefully. Precisely. I'm just a nurse who's very good at saving people who probably should be dead. That's all you need to know. That's all anyone needs to know. Brennan studied her, then nodded slowly. Fair enough, you're just a nurse. A damn good one. Who saved my life twice now. That means something. That creates a debt I take seriously. She finished the surgery, stabilized all three men, gave them antibiotics and detailed instructions for recovery. You call me if anything changes. Infection, fever, increased bleeding, anything at all. I don't care what time, you call. Why are you helping us? One of the other men asked. You don't know us. Don't know what we did or why we're shot. I don't need to know. You're bleeding and you need help. That's enough. She left, drove back to the hospital, finished her shift like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just performed battlefield surgery in a warehouse on men who couldn't officially exist. But something had changed. The secret was leaking. People were figuring it out. Marines were connecting dots. How long before the wrong people connected them too? 8 months after Richmond, she was jogging in the park. Early morning, alone. No limp, because no one was watching. And running felt like freedom, even if freedom was temporary. A car pulled up beside her. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Government plates or corporate security. Either way, nothing good. The window rolled down. A man she didn't recognize, late 40s, hard eyes that had seen violence and chosen it as profession. Elena Vance? She kept jogging. You have the wrong person. We both know that's a lie. He kept pace in the car, easy, casual, like this was a normal conversation. My employer would like to meet you, discuss opportunities, mutually beneficial arrangements. Not interested in any opportunities. $6 million. That's what the combined bounties total now. Chechens raised theirs. Iranians added more. Word spread that you're alive after Montana. Lots of people looking. Lots of money waiting. She stopped running, turned, faced him directly, let him see something in her eyes. Something that remembered 201 eliminations. Something that wasn't afraid of threats. Tell your employer I'm retired. Permanently. Not available for contract work. Not available for any work. Not interested in opportunities regardless of compensation. He smiled. No humor, just professional assessment. Everyone has a price, Ms. Vance. Mine is being left alone. Drive away while you still can. You can't hide forever. Eventually someone will find you. Someone will collect that bounty. Better to work for someone who'll protect you, who use your skills for purposes you can control. She stepped closer to the car, close enough to see his pupils dilate, close enough to make him understand she wasn't afraid. That fear was a tool she'd learned to wield instead of experience. If someone comes for that bounty, they'll die trying to collect it. I'm retired, not dead, not soft, not vulnerable. There's a difference between choosing peace and being incapable of violence. She held his gaze. I choose peace, but I'm very, very good at violence when peace isn't an option. Tell your employer that. Tell everyone who's looking. Angel 6 wants to be left alone. Anyone who won't respect that choice learns why she earned the name. He studied her for a long moment, saw the truth, saw the weapon underneath the nurse's facade, saw that pushing would cost more than any bounty was worth. Message delivered. I'll tell him you declined. The car drove away. She watched it disappear, then resumed jogging as if nothing had happened, as if threats were just weather, just background noise in a life built on careful lies and harder truths. But the message was clear. The world knew. The secret was out. Angel 6 was alive and people were hunting. People would keep hunting until someone succeeded or she stopped them. She had choices to make. Hide deeper, run farther, change identities again, or stand her ground and dare them to try. That night, she went to the storage unit, the one Harlow had given her the key for. Inside, wrapped in treated cloth, the Macmillan TAC 50. Disassembled, waiting, patient as stone. She looked at it for a long time, at the pieces of her past, at the weapon she'd sworn not to need again, at the tool that turned her from Kira into Elena with just 28 seconds of assembly, then closed the unit. locked it, walked away without touching anything. She didn't need the rifle, didn't need to be Elena Vance, didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Let them hunt, let them come. She'd face them as Kira, as a nurse who just wanted to save lives, who'd chosen healing over killing and meant it. But if they pushed, if they forced her hand, if they threatened the people she'd saved, or the life she'd built, or the promises she'd made, well, the rifle would be there, waiting, patient, ready, because you never stopped being what you were. You just got better at choosing when to be it. And sometimes the best way to keep peace was to be capable of war, to be ready for violence even while choosing mercy, to be Angel 6 when needed and Kira Ashford when possible. The balance, the choice, the daily decision to save instead of destroy. That was the real fight, not the one in Montana, not the 201 eliminations, not the impossible shots through blizzards. The real fight was choosing to heal every single day despite being very, very good at killing. And so far, healing was winning. One patient at a time, one life saved at a time, one promise kept at a time. That was enough, had to be enough, would be enough until circumstances proved otherwise. 1 year after Montana, anniversary of the night everything changed. Kira sat in her apartment, quiet evening, no shift scheduled, no emergencies demanding immediate response, just solitude and memory and the weight of promises kept. She'd saved 127 lives in the past year, cardiac arrests, traumatic injuries, critical hemorrhages, respiratory failures, each one a small redemption. Each one balancing against the 201 kills that would always define her operational history. Her phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number that resolved into a name she recognized. Thank you for my life, for my Marines, for keeping promises when it cost you everything. You'll always be a hero to those who know, even if the world never does. Captain Reed Blackwell. She stared at the message, felt something warm in her chest. Recognition, gratitude, the acknowledgement she told herself didn't matter, but absolutely did. She typed back carefully, just doing what anyone would do. Take care of your Marines, Captain. They're worth protecting. His response came immediately. Not anyone, someone extraordinary. If you ever need anything, anytime, any place, any reason, you call. We remember. We honor our debts. Always. She put the phone down, looked around her apartment, at the small life she'd built, at Garrett's photo on the refrigerator showing his daughter at 1 year old, at the medical textbooks on the shelf, at the normal existence she'd fought so hard to achieve. This was enough. This small life, these quiet victories, this peaceful existence. Elena Vance had been a weapon, necessary for a time, effective beyond measure, but incomplete, just a tool pointed at targets by people who understood geopolitics, but never pulled triggers themselves. Kira Ashford was a healer, imperfect, limited by physics and resources, but whole, complete, human in ways Angel 6 had never been allowed to be. She could live with being Kira, could embrace the limp and the lies and the constant vigilance, could accept the loneliness that came with secrets too dangerous to share. As long as she kept saving people, as long as promises meant something, as long as the 18 Marines from Montana stayed safe and alive in future bound. The rest didn't matter. The bounties, the hunters, the people who wanted Angel 6 dead more than they wanted peace. Let them come. She'd face them as a nurse who'd learned to survive, as a woman who'd chosen healing over killing, as someone who understood that the greatest strength wasn't eliminating enemies, it was saving friends, protecting innocence, keeping promises that mattered. She turned off the lights, went to bed. Tomorrow would bring another shift, more lives to save, more chances to balance the ledger, more opportunities to prove that Kira Ashford mattered more than Elena Vance ever had. And maybe, eventually, The count would show she'd saved more than she'd killed, that she'd built more than she'd destroyed, that healing defined her more than violence. That would be enough. That would be everything. Outside, Richmond slept. Inside, a legend pretended to be ordinary. And somewhere in the margins between, 18 Marines lived because someone impossible had broken cover to keep a promise. The world would never know the full truth, would never understand what happened in that Montana blizzard, would never realize the limping nurse in their emergency room was the greatest sniper alive. But truth didn't need recognition. Promises didn't need witnesses. Heroes didn't need parades. They just needed purpose. And Kira Ashford had found hers. She saved lives. That's what she did. That's who she was. That's who she'd chosen to become. And if someday circumstances forced her to be Elena again, if some crisis demanded Angel 6 return, if 18 more Marines needed saving and no one else could do it, well, the rifle was in storage. The training never faded. The warrior never truly died. She just learned to sleep, learned to wait, learned to be patient. Because some angels didn't need heaven. They just needed a reason to fight. And protecting the innocent was reason enough. Always had been. The night swallowed her secrets. The morning would bring new patience, new chances to balance scales, new opportunities to prove that healing mattered more than killing. That was the real mission. Not Montana, not the 201st, not the impossible shots or the legendary reputation. The real mission was choosing mercy when violence was easier, choosing life when death was simpler, choosing to heal when the world wanted you to hurt. Elena Vance had learned that lesson in blood and snow and cold that froze souls. Kira Ashford lived it every day, every patient, every shift, every quiet moment between crises. And that finally was peace. Not the absence of capability, but the daily choice to use capability for building instead of destroying. The warrior resting, the angel healing, the legend fading into grateful silence, until the world needed her again. And then, only then, would she rise. But for now, she slept. She saved. She lived. And 18 Marines thanked God she'd been there when it mattered most. That was legacy. That was honor. That was everything that mattered. The rest was just noise, just stories, just legends that people told to feel better about surviving the dark. And Kira Ashford, limping through hospital corridors, saving lives one patient at a time, had finally found her peace. Not in forgetting what she'd been, but in choosing what she'd become. Not Angel 6, not Elena Vance, not the ghost or the legend or the weapon. Just Kira, the nurse, the healer, the woman who kept promises. And that was enough.